Hello everyone, if I told you this was probably off a Toyota or a Nissan or a Kia or some other sort of Asian brand, you'd probably believe me. But what if I told you this was off an €100,000 BMW? You'd probably think I was having a laugh. Well, sadly no, I'm not having a laugh. This is what BMW sadly these days is resorting to. They've already countermeasured it, it seems. And this is going to be a very interesting video because this garbage, cheap rubbish, plastic crap, is the reason why the active cruise stopped working, why basically all the driver safety systems shut down. It's going to be a good video this, you'll learn a lot from it, so check it out. So I've got this fine specimen today, a G05, and it's got a problem apparently with something to do with the CAFAS camera maybe. It says check control message for suspension fault and some other nonsense, but the trouble is this doesn't work, so now I'm going to have to just do this without a wiring diagram. That's going to be hard, isn't it, because I don't have access to wiring diagram. I'll use ThinkTo, but I've no wiring diagram access. So I'm going to use a power probe on this job, and the reason being is there's 3 wires on each sensor. I'll do a diagram towards the end of the video. Actually, I'll do the diagram and I'll put it in the video at this point so you can see what it is. So have a look at that and come back to me in a minute. So it's a really simple circuit, 3 wires, 5 volt which is always present, a ground which is always present, and a signal which will bounce between 0 and 5 volts when the armature, if you want to call it that, moves. So as the car goes up and down, that is swinging like that, and it's changing the variable resistance inside. The resistance is variable, and of course then it's going to send a signal out here to the either the EHC module or the vertical dynamic platform, depending on how the car's set up essentially. And I'll tell you what you should see usually. There's 2 sensors on the back. One side will be to the car's in the middle position because it's 4-axle suspension, should be 1.5 volts, the other should be over 3 volts. So let's say that could be the left side and the right side, and the front will be the same. And the reason for that is it's just like when you look at them, one is kind of that way and the other one is that way at rest, so the voltage changes because it's variable resistor. So the other side of the car, let's say that was the right one, the left one would look more like that shape at rest. So they basically like pair of legs swinging out, if you like. That's why the voltages are they're half of each other. Does that make sense? If you swapped them around and put that, if you put that in that position, that would read 1.5, it wouldn't read 3, for example. So that's how the system works essentially. But there is one massive issue with this, that when you unplug these electrically, you will see a ground on this wire, and that's normal, that's okay. And in the video you're going to see why that becomes problematic for fault diagnosis and troubleshooting purposes. So just remember, when this is unplugged, you'll have 5 volts of ground and a ground, you'll have 2 grounds, that's normal. But how do you know if it's short into ground here? Well, you're going to find out in the video. For many years, what I loved about BMW was the simple fact that I didn't have to stress about the air suspension when I jack it up, unlike Audis and Volkswagens and Range Rovers and stuff. But on these G05s, unfortunately, we need to lock the suspension. And what we do is we hold this button for 7 seconds like this. And then eventually, hopefully, the LED will go out. And the light is now out. There you are, chassis function restricted. The issue is, I hope it doesn't affect my ride height sensors, because I now have to go and check the ride height sensors and compare them to the other side. And if worse comes to worse, I'll just have to take the height sensors off completely and just swap them left to right, see if the fault transfers. There's no wiring diagram. It still doesn't work. I've nothing. I'm doing it all by geniusness, I guess. Right, this system is dead easy. It's 3 wires each side. The first one is the power supply, just shy of 5 volts. You can just see it on that wire there. Then we're going to go to the next wire, which is the signal wire, I believe. I think it's the signal wire, so let's do that. This is the good side, by the way. That's the signal wire, the middle one. Should have less than 1 volt on that one. Perfect, 0.6 of a volt, but there's no ground. Remember that, it's important. There's no ground on the signal, the middle wire. The last one is simple. The last one is a simple ground supply. Just a ground, just a reference ground from the EHC ECU. And it's a ground. So we have a ground, a live, and a signal. Now let's go up to our other side, our dodgy side, and see how it compares. We've got a ground on that one. Top one, we should have 5 volts, so just shy off. Excellent. How about the signal? Remember we had 0.6 something on the other side. Yep. What about this side? Oh, we've got a fault, we've got a short to ground. That's exactly what the fault code said. Now we need to work out roughly where it is. I bird that back, it didn't show anything. So at this point now, you probably wonder why it's 0.6. Well, please remember that when I told you before about the values being 3 and 1.5, well, when the car's in the air, suspension, even though it's locked, it does sag a bit. So the height of the suspension changes actually. So that's why we've got that value of 0.6. Now, the value can be anything really, because this car can go extremely high. In fact, it goes so high at some point that the height sensors, they stop displaying values. It goes past the max amount, if you can believe that. I don't know how that's possible, but when I tested it, when I fixed it, after I fixed it, that's what it was. So I just thought I'd explain that. That's why you're seeing 0.6. Don't get hung up on the value of 1.5 and 3. I'm just saying that's like what it is, or what it was after I fixed it at rest. And I'll show you that at the end of the video. But when it's up in the air, it could be anything, because, you know, the arm is moving like that as the suspension sags, you know. What we're more concerned with is that we've got a signal on the right one, but the left one, our bad side, left rear, is shorted to ground, isn't it? It shouldn't have a ground on the signal wire. What you'll find on a lot of control units is that when you disconnect something, that's actually disconnected, that plug. It's loose, basically. Just take me word for it, it's not connected. You can see the waterproof band there, so it's loose, that. And look what happens, we have the same ground. In fact, we'll have a ground probably on everything, because what will happen is when it detects an open, look, see it's come out, you see, it'll switch everything off, you see, for safety reasons. So we can't really say it's the sensor. We've got 5-volt supply still, but the trouble is the signal wire just goes open, so it just goes to a ground. So your signal wire, when it's not connected to the system, it'll just go to a ground, and that's a big bloody problem, isn't it? Because how do I know it's not the sensor what's shorted? Well, the only way to do it now is a component test, isn't it? We need to test the pins inside the sensor, because if that's disconnected, don't tell me anything. It's either check that and compare it to this side, component wise, and see if we can see any resistance or anomaly or shorts or something, or we take them off and swap them side to side and see if the fault transfers. So I'm on the ETK there now, and the good news is essentially the sensors are the same part number, so that means I can swap them. The reason I'm going to swap them is, as you've seen, it's going to be much more difficult to prove a short to ground, since that when the connectors are disconnected, the signal defaults to ground as it is. How are you going to check it unless you actually took the wire off both ends and then check for a physical ground when there was nothing connected both ends? That's the only way to do it. Well, I'm not going to do that, am I? What I'm going to do is I'm going to measure the sensor, each sensor. It's very crude, it's not the best way, but usually a sensor will have the same internal resistance values. We go from signal wire, middle wire to ground, middle wire to positive, so we do all three in turn. We should have similar resistance values. There shouldn't be a massive value. Usually it's in mega ohms because you're going through an internal circuit. If there's a huge mega ohm difference, the sensor's goosed. But what I'll do, because I can't get a sensor today and I want to end the video just by proving where the fault was, I will swap the sensor around. But let's do the measurement first. So there's a value of a mega ohm value, and what I'm doing there, I'm going between the ground, the middle wire, and the negative terminal, the top one. And I'm going to compare it to the other side, and I'm pretty sure it's different. Well, there's a lot less resistance on this side, 3.4 mega ohms. And on this side it has 40 mega ohms to the positive, and it has 0 on the other side. So I will swap the sensor. It's definitely a faulty sensor. So this is first time I've had to do with these modern sensors now. They're real cheap rubbish compared to the old ones, plastic. But you might not hear it. But it's very gritty, and it's knackered. There's a lot of grit and shite in them. So I guess it's got water in it. And I think that's what the issue is going to be. I'll just straighten these pins up a touch. So essentially I can swap the sensors over, but I can't, the rods are the wrong way. So all I need to do is simply swap the rods over, and now we've got a good match. We can put them back and see if the fault transfers. So remember this side we have 0.6. Well, on this middle wire now we've got a short to ground, so obviously it was just literally the sensor. So the sensor's shorted essentially. That was the issue with it. So this is the bad sensor from the left side. Now I've got a fault, no fault code for short, but I've got a fault code for the height extremely high on this side. There's the ground, and obviously the last one would be the power supply. The other side I've got 4 volts and 4 volts. There's your power supply. So it's a faulty sensor, so that job is now kind of diagnosed, and I think a lot of 2 sensors, they're both a bit iffy. So you saw it a bit weird that, so when we swapped the left sensor to the right, we didn't get a short circuit fault anymore, but as you saw, we got short circuit faults when they're both disconnected. Like I always said to you, sometimes BMW don't know the difference. Cars don't know the difference between open circuit or short circuit. They just don't know the difference. But what solved it for me, the crucial thing on this particular job, was essentially when we swapped the sensor over, and even before that, there was always a short on that middle signal wire, wasn't there, to ground. So the right one never had a short, but the left one did on the signal wire. It was always green on the power probe, it was always terminal 31. When I swapped it, it became the right side was shorted and the left side wasn't shorted anymore. So that was the proof that it's a sensor. So now I've actually erased all the faults. We do have that short circuit on the rear right, so that's your proof that the sensor definitely was causing it. It's a few days later now, and we've got all the new components. We'll come back to that job now and finish this video off. So we've got some new height sensors, which are actually better. You notice that they're well, they're new, so they're better in that sense. Got some new captive threads and everything for it there. And what I like compared to the old sensors, we've got the old-fashioned threaded balls here. Now they're also plastic inside still, so they're not going to rust. They used to be made of metal, these, right? Stupid idea. Now they're plastic, which is much more sensible, of course. So it's going to be really tasty, that, because unlike the other ones which I had to pry off, you remember, off the sensors, these ones have got the old-fashioned thread, which is going to lock in nicely like that. I just need to get some nuts, because they didn't supply any nuts, which is just typical. In the end, we opted for aftermarket sensors by Arnott, so they should be pretty goddamn good. And then we got these from BMW. You can notice now there's actually a bolted connection and there's a captive thread, and it actually got the old-fashioned style threaded locking nut system. So 8mm at the back and 10mm nylock on the front, which in my opinion is much better. The only thing I didn't have was any M5 set screws, but they don't foul the sensor connection, so they're fine. A bit long, but they'll do. They didn't actually come in the kit, unfortunately. And the back of it, again, is as you can see, it's much improved over the original. Up on the bench and show you, the original just plastic rubbish basically. This is kind of plastic rubbish. It has this lovely captive metal thread in there now, which is going to be much more sturdy. Right, let's erase all this disgraceful ride height issue problem and see how we get on with it, essentially. That's all it was, just a knackered sensor, and they've been countermeasured, so I changed them both, and now the car's bang on really. Well, it works, suspension works anyway, I suppose that's the main thing, isn't it? Right, good. Channel's doing great, thanks very much everyone. I think 600 new subscribers in a month, that's not bad at all. If I could sort of stretch that to 600 a week, I might have a chance to get 100,000 subs one day. But yeah, you're all doing a great job. I've seen how many of you are sharing, over 100 shares in a month, that's a lot. And thanks very much, really appreciate it. Don't forget to subscribe, because it's dead important, because I'm no Matt Armstrong. I've not got Matt Armstrong's beautiful white teeth, have I? Unfortunately. And I haven't got the money to buy a Rolls Royce Cullinan. But I'm pretty good at fault finding, so that's not so bad, is it? Right, until next time.